this is the game that we wanted to play since like we were game developers, and we think it's going to be amazing, but how will the player base react? And we can't really not talk about, Diablo Immortal, because this is, for some people, this will carry the stigma of you're just taking something and you're just putting it on mobile.
For me, I'm trying to make something that will convince serious PC players that there is a way of making immersive and rich experience on mobile. This is, I think, the biggest challenge.
There is perhaps nothing gamers are more skeptical of than a mobile game with a beloved IP attached to it, and a lot of that skepticism is well earned. For every Pokemon Go, there are a dozen less flattering comparisons, and with this game coming from CD Projekt, the timing seems a little bit weird too, with Cyberpunk going through delay after delay. When I first heard about this project, my guess was that the ever-growing CD Projekt were jonesing for some of that mobile games business, and in the wake of Niantic's success, spun up a mobile division to use their IP for something a bit more mass market. That the decision was justified by business people and that a bunch of well-meaning developers are working on facilitating that vision. But from talking to the people responsible for the project, I've realized that the truth is almost the complete opposite. The project was pitched to CD Projekt from an external company. The external company was actually just two indie devs from Poland, and they've been wanting to make a game like this for almost a decade.
I'm Maciej Weiss, and I'm game director at Spokko.
And my name is Rafał Staszewski, and I'm the technical director, I guess. I'm the other side of the coin.
This story spans a decade, so let me get you through the first few years pretty sharpish. Rafał and Maciej met in university in 2008. Both were studying game dev with dreams of one day working on large games. But 12 years ago, there were fewer options for prospective game devs in Poland, especially if you wanted to self-publish. But Maciej had done a semester of mobile games development while on a student exchange in Leeds, and over a burger in Warsaw's Hard Rock Cafe, he convinced his friend Rafał to postpone his AAA dreams, and instead work in the dynamic world of mobile development. For context, 2008 was a year before Angry Birds came out.
I understood at one moment that we really do have like a big opportunity to create games and publish them, because this was all like, sure, if I finish my master's and I just go find a job, I need to start working on a title somewhere. And this was like, hey, you want to do your own games? All you need is to get a Mac.
No publishers, no other people that were saying what you have to do and what you shouldn't do. So yeah, it was like me and Rafał and our ideas.
Their first game was Tap of War, a simple local multiplayer game that they used to learn how to publish on the App Store. And wouldn't you know it was an accidental success, getting over 1 million downloads in 4 months, having gotten into the top 3 games on the American App Store for a few days. It didn't make them any money, but the guys still remember receiving an email from some Japanese girls who loved to use the app as a drinking game. Creative satisfaction comes in many forms. Over the next few years, the two would continue to evolve with the platform, moving into puzzle games like their Tiki Totem series. Their big break would come a few years later with a side-scrolling driving game inspired by Trials and Carmageddon. They called it Zombie Road Trip.
You're speeding along to the right. It's like a scrolling game, right? You're going right, and there's a big horde of zombies from the left slowly gaining on you, and you have to do backflips, front flips, and as you do that, you get a boost, so you get away from the horde a bit. And we had millions of downloads. The schedule was that I woke up, got something to eat, and then I opened the door, and then they were outside eating. So I let them in, and we worked, and then I let them out, and then the next day we just repeat, right? There was even a moment in our life when we were working weekends, but we just finally decided some moment in time that it's not really a good idea,
Yeah, but also we've spent, I remember, 1 month of playing, not working, but playing StarCraft beta all the time, so yeah.
Yeah, StarCraft 2 came out, and what could we do, right?
Hell, it's about time.
The two guys and their friend Michał were spending every spare moment of their day working on the game, all while still studying full-time courses in university. But it was making them money. Zombie Road Trip had generated cash through video ads and in-app purchases. So with millions of people playing the game, I wanted to know how they monetized the title. Did they do so responsibly, or did they use the game's mechanics to ensure that players had to spend?
We were experimenting a little, but we were trying to always be generous. So if someone was playing for few hours, should be able to buy the most expensive thing in the game.
Yeah, I remember when we were thinking about the most expensive tier of the coins you can get, and we summed up all of the cars that you could buy. So we knew like how much gold you need, and that was how much the last tier would give you. So it was sort of like we should be able to do everything in our game.
And we always stick with one currency. Then the players know what is the real worth of the things in the game. We are not like messing around with numbers. So we always trying to be honest.
Zombie Road Trip's development was hard on them. Their colleague Michał left the team when stress and infighting became too much. So when it became clear that they couldn't deal with it anymore, they decided to sell the title and cash out. By now it was 2015, the two of them had been working in this space for about 7 years, and mobile games were continuing to evolve. By now the trend was a genre called hyper-casual games, simple experiences with clever gameplay tweaks that would keep players coming back.
The decision process, it takes only a few seconds because the game is usually free, so you are not thinking much about downloading. So how the player thinks the game will behave should be really, really obvious, but then very fast you have to present the twist.
Right. So if you don't have that twist, what happens then? Do they just not engaged?
Yeah, the game gets dull because you're just constantly doing the same thing.
There is no challenge. The twist like forces player to learn something new, and this is the challenge for them. The thing that bring us to mobile gaming, and specifically to the smartphones, because mobile gaming was existing before on Nokia and like candy bar phones. There was the touchscreen interface. So
do you call it a candy bar phone?
Candy bar. It's like not the candy bar.
Yeah, is that what you call them? Candy bar phones? That's great.
Yes. I think in Polish we are calling that like without the antenna on the top. It's
so then it becomes a candy bar phone, like a Nokia 3210 is a candy bar phone.
Yes. So it's candy bar.
That's a great term. I wish that left Poland. That's wonderful.
We're always thinking about what new types of gameplay are possible using that new technologies, and the genre that is only possible on mobile is the geolocation or location-based game. We knew the market will progress, and sooner or later we will have normal games ported to the phones one way or another. And if we want to make mobile games in the future, we need to find a genre that will always be only possible on mobile. So that's why, like, it was just interesting idea for a long time.
During these days, the team secured a publishing deal with Ketchup and made a series of hyper-casual experiences. But during this time, the guys were constantly brainstorming and pitching larger ideas, more hardcore gaming experiences that could only work on phones. They had an idea of using QR codes planted in the real world to create an outdoor gaming experience, large codes mounted on billboards or smaller stickers slapped onto bus stops. But in a market driven by giving the player what they want with a twist, building a game around an entirely new genre was an almost impossible sell. Well, that was until Ingress, the predecessor to Pokemon Go, which came out in 2014.
It was just amazing because the previous things it sounded cool on paper and it was kind of cool as an idea, but it always was kind of wonky for the user, for the gamer, and it was inconvenient because either you had to scan the code or you had to go touch something, and this was just, hey, you walk there, you're there, you can do something, and the whole world is your playground. And it was awesome. And it got us hooked, really. Like, yeah, like we stopped working on our projects for a long time. Just to going outside, looking for like, you know, good places to put the markers or whatever, because Ingress was very abstract. And that's the internal thing we were always talking about was like, imagine if Ingress would talk to guys from Blizzard so they could make like a World of Warcraft Ingress. Like you could go hunting monsters, you could find bosses, you could actually explore, you know? Yeah, but that was only...
Yeah, they weren't talking to Blizzard, they were talking to the Pokemon company.
Yeah.
One of the media franchises the guys had thought about was Pokemon. They said it was an obvious choice, mass market and hardcore gamer appeal, an experience based around collecting. And like many gamers around the world, once it came out, they too were hooked. The guys would use a set of popular third-party tracking maps to pinpoint the location of Pokemon and drive to the location.
I remember our enthusiasm died down when Niantic curbed down on these like server APIs that you could query where you could make your own maps, because up until that point we were having our own maps where we could see, Squirtle spawned over there, okay, it's like 10 minutes drive, let's go. We wanted to be more of a hunter than just like a gatherer that just roams around and whatever he can find, he picks it up, right?
Yeah, and we felt that like the Pokemon was so popular because people were emotionally connected to the game world.
Pokemon Go showed that there was a market for these types of games, and when Google opened up the Points of Interest API and Apple released their Augmented Reality API, suddenly it was possible for smaller teams like theirs to make these types of games. The only missing piece was an immersive world to set it in, and it just so happened that by now there was a pretty popular franchise sitting on their doorstep. So, how did they convince CD Projekt?
I think it was easy to convince them to hear us out, so that they didn't immediately dismiss it as, get out of here, that's crazy talk. But in order for the whole thing to come as a project, it was a long road where we had to prove, sort of, make concept work and
doing the prototype for over half a year to be sure that the characters that looks the same on the PS4 and then look the same on the iPhone is even possible. On the iPhone, you have to put this in 60 frames per second because otherwise it's not responsive enough, because you are touching the screen and you have the screen really close to your eyes. It took us half a year of recreating one of the first quests from The Witcher 3 and then to figure out how to interact with monsters, how to fight with monsters.
It's one thing to see, abstract, fluffy monsters that from the Pokemon franchise. You can't really relate to how they look. But when you have the immersive story, when you're having this guy tell you about his family being stuck down the road in a wagon attacked by neckers or something, then he has to be believable. And that was very tough to pull off on mobile,
Yeah, I remember the first moment when this old lady character, we started to track the position of the phone, and the lady was turning her head when someone was going around, and even her eyes was pointing to the player. And it was so immersed. It like for us, it was one of the maybe small moments, but the breakthrough. So yeah, from that moment, we knew that this is possible.
On the face of it, a lot of Pokemon Go's success seems to be the simplicity of it. It doesn't have authored quests, dialogue, or scripts. What the guys wanted to create was much more involved. So, how are they designing quests in this world? How much of the game is story, and how much is generated on the fly? What they told me is that the game has two main pillars, a Pokemon Go style monster hunting mode, and an optional story experience that's layered on top of this. It's written in the style of Sapkowski's short stories, so less grand political opera and more local legends. perhaps my favorite part is that unlike Pokemon Go, which killed the API that allowed users to create dynamic maps, this game has a map built into it, the conceit being that you use Witcher senses to scan the area for monsters. Mostly though, I just wanted to know how quests worked. Would I have to walk to a quest giver, walk somewhere else, and then walk back? It turns out designing this was as challenging as I imagined.
The other pillar, which is the story, right? We had to test and we had to think about how we actually want to approach it, because it's very different if you actually have to go and get the wagon that's broken down, 300 meters away from you, and then maybe come back for your reward. It hasn't been done before. So will players like that? Do you like is it going to be something enjoyable? So the prototype was also there to answer that question. Is it going to be nice to walk up to a board that's going to have all these contracts on it and then go look for them and then come back? Or should you not come back because that's backtracking, and it's bad even when you're just sitting on the couch? You don't like backtracking. So what if you actually have to backtrack in real life? That's going to be a pain in the ass. We think we have the right idea, but it hasn't been done before. It's not really a good idea to make the player walk from A to B and that being the only thing that's going to happen to him. We had a moment where you finished talking with someone, then you had to go somewhere, and it was a 3-4 minute walk and nothing happened. And it was really boring. That's why quests in the game, they're on sort of another plane. You can do them, but there's lots and lots of things to do while, let's say, you're in transit, while you're walking to that wagon, or while you're gathering something.
We figured out that it's very inconvenient to talk longer with the NPC in AR because you have to put the phone in this position, and it's very tiring. So we need to shorten the sentences that the NPC was talking, rework, reinvent how to make compelling story, but making it in shorter bits of conversations.
Rafael Marche and their team have been working on the game for a few years now, but with so much new ground being walked, they needed to open the game up to players to get feedback. That's why they've recently soft-launched the title in New Zealand. The company's name is Spokko, which roughly translates to something like cool or alright in English. It's since become part of CD Projekt's organization and has moved into offices in the company's ever-growing space in Warsaw, but they operate independently of the work going on in CD Projekt Red. So while on the face of it this looks like a big company attempting to cash in on a trend, for these two at least, it's been their main quest for over a decade. To make a type of game that can only be done on mobile and win over the hardcore gaming crowd. So before we left, I asked them how they felt about the two biggest challenges they face. First, the likelihood of a backlash from fans, and second, launching an AR game during a global pandemic in which people are being told to stay at home and avoid loitering in groups.
This is the game that we wanted to play since we were game developers. And we think it's going to be amazing, but it hasn't been done before, so we want to play it, but do the players want to play it? This is the most important moment for us in the whole development cycle, where we're going to actually get feedback from people if it's something that they want to play, right? So we're going to test retention, we're going to test the servers, technical crash, etc. But the most important thing is, how will the player base react? And we can't really not talk about, Diablo Immortal, because this is, for some people, this will carry the stigma of, you're just taking something and you're just putting it on mobile. And I want to play it on my console, but this thing is very different. It's you can only play it on your mobile phone, and it's only going to give you that amount of immersion there.
I'm trying to make something that will convince serious PC players that there is a way of making immersive and rich experience on mobile. This is, I think, the biggest challenge, to convince people that this is something more than another mobile game.
Obviously, a rough time to ask people to go outside. So that's one of the factors that kind of.
But our game is a single player experience. You have to go outside, and the only thing you can do is walking with a distance from other people. So the location-based games are giving you the reason to walk. This is the perfect genre to go outside and play your game.
Spokko was once just a handful of people, but now it's a company of 40 working to release this game. I doubt anyone's expecting the Witcher Monster Slayer to reach the stratospheric heights of Pokemon Go, but for Rafael Marche and the team behind them, the hope seems to be that it pushes the genre of geolocational-based games forward, creates an experience that fans of The Witcher can get behind, and perhaps most importantly, give players an excuse to get outside and go on adventures.